On. Off. Our service is about to begin with welcoming but creepy music. Let us give ear, one and all. Welcome all ye people and scallywags to Are You Ready for the Service Today? But before we begin, I have a joke for you. What is a pirate's favorite letter? Can anyone guess? R. Aren't you wrong? It be the C, matey. It be the C. And now, let me introduce you to my fellow costumers. I am here with a treasure chest, you see over there, and there be some gold doubloons. The question is it better to give or to take? Well, we are a pirate family that says it is better to give, friends. It is better to give. Now, will you join with me in our opening affirmation that we often say together, probably better without a sword? It is good to be. It is good to be here. It is so good to be here together. Welcome, one and all. And now I'd like to invite Marjorie Wormser, our Sunday associate, to come forward and share some announcements.
Good morning. Good morning and welcome to the Morristown Unitarian Fellowship. We are a spiritually alive, justice-centered, inclusive community where we covenant to weave together the fabric of community from the strands of our separate lives. Wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. I have a couple of brief announcements, and if you are new here or a visitor, please be sure and stop by the welcome table. You can gather information, and if you'd like to be included in the mailing list to receive additional information, that's the place to go. Today is the last day to offer an event or an item for the annual service auction, which will happen on Sunday, November 14th. Donors may also drop off items offered for sale at the service auction table, which is also out the gate and to your left. Be sure to label any item with your name. And tie-dyed T-shirts are also for sale, a connection with this year's theme, What a Long, Strange Trip It's Been. Stop by the table and learn more. Next week, our Odyssey project launches at 1 p.m. in our sanctuary and on Zoom. All are invited to come and hear Betsy Burr's Odyssey and to be able to ask questions afterwards. Our offering today will be split between our fellowship and the New Jersey Together. Thank you so much for your generosity. And finally, following this 9 a.m. service, there will be a Halloween party. Thank you.
And I just want to invite people to continue doing what they are doing. If you've brought a memento or a photograph of an ancestor, you are welcome to bring it forward to our altar, which is growing as we speak. And now we'd love to invite the Mesias family to come forward to help us light our chalice together. And the words are in your order of service. Testing, good.
We like this chalice because we are the Unitarian Universalists. We are the fellowship of the open minds, the loving hearts, and the helping hands. Together we work to bring peace and justice to the earth.
We invite you to rise in body or spirit and mask and sing your heart out to our opening song, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your ears to the song. Open your ears to the song. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Don't be afraid of some change. Don't be afraid of some change. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in.
All right. Awesome. Good morning, everyone. So, we are here on Halloween. A fun day. You all look so lovely who have dressed up, the extent of which is I let the girls put some blue in my beard and didn't show up too well. So I applaud you who did a little bit more than I. There we go. There we go. I'm joining the pirate team here. Halloween's a great day. It's a day where we dress up and we get candy, right, kids? Right? Is that what today's about? Why? Yeah, I know. How many people have already eaten candy that this morning? Of course, mine did. Excellent. Today is a day we celebrate Halloween, but it's based off of different traditions grappling with a very bummer of a topic, not an exciting one like candy, but that of death. Or it can be a bummer. And that's what I want to talk to you about a little bit. So, death is an inevitable part of our life cycles. And we usually only talk about it when it is upon us. We only talk about it at funerals or funerals, really, when it's something we're grappling with. And so when we talked about today's multi-gin, we really wanted to talk about death and how it is handled in different traditions, how we can approach it as you use, because it's coming for all of us. That's the reality of it. There's not that magical pill that'll make us all live forever, and honestly, I'm not sure I'd want to. But there are many ways that many religions across the world deal with death. In fact, that's what one would say the reason religion came up in our early development as humans is what happens when we die. Where do we go after this place? I'm going to share two stories today of the way in which my family, I've learned from those in my family to deal with death and why I think that my family is not quite as scared of it. The first, I want to share a story of my grandma and grandpa on my dad's side. They lived in Poughkeepsie, New York, and they, very early on, when I was like Charlotte's age, bought a plot in a cemetery, and we would go and visit it all the time because it was a very nice place, set up over on top of the Hudson River, and they were prepared for death, and we always talked that someday when grandma or grandpa died, well, if the deal was, if Grandpa died first, or Grandma died first, once Grandpa died, we had to dig her up and put him underneath so he was closer to the worms. That was the joke that my grandma used to tell all the time. She didn't want to be with the worms, and my poor grandpa was going to have to do it. He inevitably passed first, so he went down first, right? Charlotte was there, and she looked in the grave there as we lowered him down, and then Grandma died not soon after that, in kind of a classic story of the husband going, the wife not hanging on very much longer after that. And at both of those funerals, I did both of them as the family religious professional. My brother, who's an accountant, does all our taxes, and I do all our weddings and funerals. And so I was doing the funeral, and I remember standing in there in the kind of the chapel at the cemetery there, and not feeling sad. I don't think anyone felt sad. I mean, we miss Grandma, but we were prepared for this our entire lives. We went and we saw the grave and looked over the river as they were going to, and we just knew that this was a thing that was coming. And I think it was important for us to acknowledge that death is coming, to be prepared for it, and that is part of our life cycle, right? We celebrate all sorts of life milestones. We celebrate births, we celebrate marriages, we celebrate love, we mourn heartbreak, but sometimes when it comes to that end of life cycle, we try to pretend like it doesn't happen. And I honestly think that makes it more difficult for us to deal with. My second story is my other side of the family. My mom's side of the family is an irreverent bunch. At Thanksgiving, there's a lot of sarcasm and jokes, and it's a little bit ridiculous there. And my mom's side of the family comes from this matriarch. Her name was Nellie. And Nellie, she was my great-grandmother. And she, towards the end of her life, she was a lifelong Methodist. And their Methodist church had one of those, like, we're going to take pictures of all the members thing. And somehow she got talked into getting this 20 by 30 headshot of herself. So it was like 3 times the size of her, and it hung in her house. And when she had died, someone saw on the back of it that she had put, I think, one of my uncles on the back of that name to take it when she had died. He didn't want this ridiculous picture. And so he went and wrote my brother's name on the sticker, or on the tape, and put it on the back. And it went to my brother. And so now she's been dead since, 20 years now. But whenever anyone gets a new house or a new milestone, their name gets added to the back of that picture, and we sneak it into their house. So, I don't know. My sister just bought a house, and my brother's getting married, so I don't know which one's going to get it, but it's definitely going to one of them. And every time we do this, it's always this this kind of joke that we have, but then it's about telling stories of Grandma Nellie and her cookies and the things that she would bake, or the stories she would tell, or going to her house this one time, telling stories about how my cousin caught a snake and let it get loose in her house, right? These just stories that we tell, and how Grandma Nellie was very chill with that. She was like, just get it out and get out of here, right? Get the snake out of here. We had these stories. So we have this kind of ritual of telling stories of the dead. We're going to talk about a couple of ways today in which various religions celebrate the dead. We are going to add our names to some flash paper. We're going to light some candles. But death is not a scary thing, right? It is a way, it is part of life. And the more we celebrate it, the more we acknowledge it, the less difficult it becomes. I think one of the problems in this world is that we are actually very scared of death. And we've seen this in the last, 18 months? When was that? Almost, I don't know, we're coming up on 2 years here, sooner than I want it to be, of this pandemic that has brought about this conversation of death again and again. And we are all afraid of what will happen if we catch this disease. I remember early on really being wary that my older in-laws might catch it from our kids. Right? What would we do to them? What that would happen there? And it was very scary because we didn't talk about it. We didn't acknowledge the reality of what was going to happen. I think it's why these mask debates and these vaccine debates keep happening, because we are so afraid, right? If you have a conversation of someone in good faith, someone who doesn't believe in vaccines, they think that the vaccines are dangerous. Someone who does believe in vaccines and think that we should all get vaccinated because the disease is more dangerous, right? It's all about this conversation about how death is coming for us. Today, we're going to celebrate death. We're going to celebrate and remember death because it is a celebration not of death, but of life, right? All of these traditions celebrate the life of people. These pictures are not pictures of dead people. These are pictures of alive people, and we celebrate them today. We celebrate them in all days. So I want to, as we go through this service and continue to have this conversation, remember those who have passed, right? If you are a young person, I remember when I'll tell one quick story. When I was a camp counselor, we would always have these conversations about things that were traumatic to young children and to kids. You may not know anyone who has died, but you may have had a pet who has died, a goldfish, a puppy, right? Those things are sad for you, but we need to remember the good times we had with all of them. Death is coming. It is real, but we need to celebrate life now and the lives of those who have been with us.
We are holding many milestones this week. It is the time in our service when we honor some of those transitions, the moments of marriage or a home purchase or losses and experiences that have happened in the lives of our fellow congregants since we last met. And you can send me these via email, or you can fill out one of the milestones cards, and we will lift them up to the care of this community. This week, we have a milestone sent to us on behalf of Nancy Lee McClure, who runs the book group, A Beloved, in this community. And in particular, we are holding Nancy's families in our hearts, and this is about her son, Jeremy Duder, who has neurofibromatosis and is in terrible pain at this time and has fallen quite ill. So I want to invite all of us to hold Nancy and her son, Jeremy. May Jeremy feel surrounded by the love of his mother and his entire family. May he feel buoyed up in spirit on the days that are most physically challenging. And may we surround Nancy and his whole family, that they may know comfort and strength, so that they may be able to offer that back to him. And may well springs of strength rise up in him. All these and so many others are our prayers, one spoken aloud and others held in our hearts. And now I'd like to invite Karina Babcock to come forward and share our story for all ages, The Memory Tree by Britta Teckentrup.
Good morning. Oop. Here is, volume okay? All right. Here is the memory tree. There was once a fox who lived with all the other animals in the forest. Thank you, yeah.
I think he has that first. That'll be better.
There we go. Fox had lived a long and happy life, but now he was tired. Very slowly, Fox made his way to his favorite spot in the clearing. He looked at his beloved forest one last time and lay down. Fox closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and fell asleep forever. Everything around Fox was still and peaceful. Snow began to fall, gently covering him with a soft blanket. Owl had watched Fox from the top of his tree. He flew down and landed next to his friend. Owl was very sad. He had known Fox for a long time, but Owl knew the time had come for his friend to leave. One by one, Fox's friends came to the clearing, first squirrel and weasel, then bear, deer, and bird, and finally, rabbit, mouse, and others came to sit by Fox. Fox had been loved by everyone. He had been kind and caring. No one could imagine life in the forest without him. The animals sat in silence for a very long time. Owl was the first to speak. He smiled warmly and said, "I remember when Fox and I were very young. Every autumn, we raced to see who could catch more falling leaves." The other animals remembered and smiled. Mouse said softly, I remember how much Fox loved the sunset. He always sat at this exact spot. The animals remembered. Many of them had joined Fox, watching the sun go down. It was a happy memory, and their sad hearts filled with warmth. Bear remembered how Fox had looked after her cubs one spring. Rabbit smiled when she told the story of how Fox had played tag with her in the tall grass. Squirrel talked about Fox helping him dig up berry nuts in the deep snow last winter. One by one, the animals remembered their favorite stories about Fox. Fox had touched the lives of all the animals in the forest with his warmth and kindness, and they all smiled, remembering. While the animals talked, a little orange plant grew out of the snow where Fox was lying. Small and delicate at first, and hardly noticeable, the plant grew bigger, stronger, and more beautiful with each story. The animals all talked about Fox throughout the night, and in the morning, the little plant had grown into a small tree. The animals saw the tree and knew that Fox was still a part of them. During the next few days, weeks, and months, the animals remembered many more stories about Fox. Their heavy hearts began to feel lighter. The more they remembered, the more the tree grew, higher and higher and more beautiful, until it was the tallest tree in the forest, a tree made from memories and full of love. Fox's tree was big and strong enough to shelter all the animals. It was always buzzing with life. The birds built their nests among the leaves, and Owl raised his grandchicks on the branches. Squirrel found a cozy home in the trunk, and Bear, Deer, and Rabbit slept in its shade. The tree gave strength to everyone who had loved Fox. And so, Fox lived on in their hearts forever. Thank you.
Karina is a member of our youth group, and just a reminder that they're going to be hosting a Halloween party following this service. And now we have a second youth group member, Miles Gorman, coming forward for our offering. First, the musical offering is Remember Me by Kristen Anderson Lopez and Robert Lopez. And then the financial offerings today will go 50% to our fellowship and 50% to support New Jersey Together. Thank you for your gifts.
Remember me, though I have to say goodbye. Remember me, don't let it make you cry. For even if I'm far away, I hold you in my heart. I sing a secret song to you each night we are apart. Remember me, though I have to travel far. Remember me, each time you hear a sad guitar, know that I am with you the only way that I can be, until you're in my arms again. Remember me. Remember me, though I have to say goodbye. Remember me, don't let it make you cry. For even if I'm far away, I hold you in my heart and sing a secret song to you each night we are apart. Remember me, though I have to travel far. Remember me, each time you hear a sad guitar, know that I am with you the only
Kristen and Robert Lopez wrote about that song. It's the power of music to bring people back to life, literally and figuratively. The dark half of the year is said to begin at this time. It is the time when the hours of the night grow longer than the hours of the day. It is the time when the final harvest is reaped. The last delicious apple is picked. And in more ancient times, where herd animals would have been killed and their meat preserved for food over the winter. It is now and was in ancient times the last gasp of summer, a time of parties and revelry, as well as a time of fear, as winter drew near and people wondered whether everyone would survive. Did they have enough to stay warm and fed through the harsh and cold days to come? Before Halloween traditions arose in Northern Europe, the Celts called this liminal time Samhain, which translates as summer's end. In the 1970s and 80s, Unitarian Universalists, inspired by the earth-centered traditions of a subset of our ancestors, the Celts, the Druids, began to re-examine, reflect on, and renew our own practices at this time of year. Out of Christianity, our parent heritage, we were familiar with All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day, November 1st and 2nd. And these are days set aside to honor spiritual ancestors, sometimes called saints, familial ancestors, and ancestors of all kinds. Altars with candles and images alongside of prayers for the deceased mark these days. We Universalists tend to favor All Souls' Day, believing that it is right to honor all departed souls and not just saints, not just some. We've never been a people who separated humankind into two camps, but instead have faithfully moved towards a vision in word and in deed, to embody the notion that all our faiths are intertwined here on earth and on a day like this to assert in the hereafter as well. The Christian holidays were moved to this time of year from their original dates in the spring because of the power of the practices that existed in this time of transitioning from one season to another. Women, in particular, in our religious tradition, were looking to reclaim the divine feminine and to connect with the natural cycles of birth, life, and death that mirrored their personal experiences. And in fact, right in that room above me, a space that was at one time women's only space, was the first place in this congregation where some of these rites of the seasons and the cycles and the rhythms of nature, of honoring the divine feminine aspects, were allowed. But soon people of all gender identities joined these women in the quest. European pagan traditions called out to them, and they began to celebrate this highest of holidays, the witches' New Year, All Hallows' Eve, Samhain. While there are the witches' costumes that you can buy in a store, the original witches were often powerful women with knowledge of healing herbs and the ways of the world and the natural world. The Christian church, which was at one point dominated by men, feared and misunderstood and were ignorant of how these women knew what they knew and wanted to get rid of them as a threat to their power. Hence the famous Salem witches' trials. The Northern Europeans were far from the only people who observed festivals and celebrated ancestors at this time of year. In Mexico, the holiday El Dia de los Muertos is a time where families create altars called ofrendas with images and mementos of those who have gone before. And you'll often find marigolds on these altars. The scent is said to guide the ancestors to the table that is set just for them. Another image of the holiday are the decorated skulls, the calaveras, which sometimes come in the form of candied sugar skulls that children delight to eat. As Nick said, this is a time to confront death, and there is, in essence, a confronting death when each child and adult takes in that skull into themselves, or even in the lighter tradition of Halloween when people dress up as skeletons. Around the world, nature teaches us that this is a time when death and life hang in the balance. Costumes, customs, light-hearted traditions, and serious religious observances have us reckon with the truth. We are like the leaves on the trees one is falling right now, fated to be born, to grow, to share a range of color and beauty, to give it all away, who we are, and then one day to let go, to fall to the earth, and to return to the ground. The love we have given away while we lived will nourish the soil and the life for the next generation. So was the story of the fox we just heard from Karina. So it is with our story. The Celts and the Druids, from whom many of the Samhain traditions are received, like others, believed that this was the time when the veil between the world was thin, meaning it was a time when they could commune with their ancestors. And one of the earliest dressing up traditions grew out of people dressing as animals and monsters so as not to be kidnapped by more mischievous spirits. But they welcomed the coming of kin and kind spirits. In fact, in the Middle Ages, there was a tradition called a dumb supper, which involved hosting ancestors, doors and windows, and look, we're outside, so nothing separates us from these kind and kindred spirits. Doors were left open, so indeed, ancestors could arrive for dinner. Adults in the family would share the news and updates from the past year, and children would entertain them with games. The end of October and the beginning of November continue to provide us with humorous and serious reminders that life is so very precious. That on what may be one of the last Sundays that feels warm, although I hope not, that we should celebrate this being alive, this end of summer, and share the warmth of community and the experience of plains. To hear is a gift not to be taken for granted. This being alive, this sharing of warmth, sharing of songs and story and games and customs and rituals. And as the world goes to sleep in winter, ancient people wondered, would it ever wake again? It is a time to remember those who have gone before and who have shared their love and light with us, or with our parents, or with their parents, or who have shared their love and their light with the communities with whom we identify, our spiritual and communal ancestors. And yes, in this time of a pandemic, we have this need of our annual practice more than perhaps ever before. Some years, the update to the ancestors are that the losses have outweighed the joy. Sometimes the updates are frightening and filled with sorrow. And other years, joy is the dominant note. Perhaps as we revisit the lives of our ancestors, as you recall kin and kindred spirits, perhaps you will find their comfort, compassion, and courage. We might find, as we are reminded of their stories, that overall there is a kind of balance and harmony in the universe, or at least a strength and resilience that provides the light and insight to make it through hard times. This isn't the first pandemic. This year, though, the global update is hard. Our global human family has reached this week the milestone of 5 million deaths due to coronavirus. And in this, our country, 750,000 have died. Our oldest member among them was Sonny Riley. Just yesterday, we lost 1,345 people in the United States and 7,298 people in the world. And yet, did you know that over 10,000 babies were born in the United States yesterday, and over 385,000 babies were born in the world? This is the crux of what it means to be human. Like the marigold that you would find on an ofrenda in a Mexican household. Like the rose which we hand our children during their baby blessings and naming ceremonies. Like the marigold, like the rose, we are full of life and color and possibility. And fragile, too. Each day is precious. Each day in this community, someone experiences a loss and someone experiences a joy. Sometimes that loss is death. Sometimes that joy is birth. We humans were made for joy and for woe. And sometimes, like today, as we parade around in costumes, as we celebrate our dead, and as we also mourn the lives cut short from a pandemic, we experience both joy and woe. It was 33 years ago tomorrow that I, as a 9th grader, took my father to the hospital with chest pain and called my mother to come meet us there. 3 days later, like the fox in the story, he went to sleep forever. I howled with grief as I imagined some of Fox's friends did, even as others sat quietly beside him. That same day was my brother's 13th birthday. I could feel both on that day, a deep sadness that life would never be the same without my father, and a strong desire to celebrate my brother. A friend helped me make it to the supermarket to buy Entenmann's cake and candles, and when I returned, we sang Happy Birthday. Life and death hanging in the balance on the same day, like they do every day. And yet, today is the time that we testify to the miracle that life continues in spite of death, and that love conquers even grief. That although my son never met my father, he knows him through stories and through me. A part of who I am and how I am is because of how my father shaped me to be. that our ancestors on the whole survived more often than they died, even in the harshest of winters, even when the food was scarce. It's a miracle worthy of celebration. Another Samhain practice is to let the fire in your home, in your hearth, go out, and to join with the community to light a new fire that you then take a piece of that light home with you again to relight and rekindle your hearth. An important ritual, a symbol that while the sun wanes and moves away from us in winter, eventually the light, the warmth, and the sun return, as does joy. So let us celebrate the waning light and the waning warmth, and let us rekindle a fire with the warmth of this community, and let each one of us take back home a piece of that light, a piece of the warmth of this people, and may it sustain us the whole winter long. Amen, and blessed be, and may it be so. Will you rise in body or in spirit? And will you sing together, and you at home sing with us the song Spirit of Life, one of the most well-known Unitarian Universalist songs there are.
And we're going to sing it in English and Spanish this morning. So, quick tutorial, repeat after me. Fuente de amor. Ven hacia mí. Y al corazón, cántale tu compasión. Sopla al volar, sube en la mar, hasta moldear la justicia de la vida. Arraigame. That's my favorite word in the whole thing. Arraigame. Beautiful. Libérame. Fuente de amor. Ven a mí, ven a mí. You sound wonderful. We'll sing it in English first and then Spanish. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. Fuente de amor, ven hacia mí, y al corazón, cántale tu compasión. Sopla al volar, sube en la mar, hasta moldear la justicia de la vida. Arraigame, libérame, fuente de amor, ven a mí, ven a mí. Spirit of life, come to me. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
So we're at the closing ritual of our service, and I want to invite you to be seated while I just share what's about to happen. First, we are going to light candles for our kindred ancestors, for our community's ancestors, and for our spiritual ancestors. Just 1 minute. And finally, the last two are for the deaths from COVID in this country, 750,000, and the deaths of COVID around the world, 5 million. And then I invite you to walk over to that table or move over to that table, and my pirate partner over there will help you with some pens and paper. And I invite you to write on that paper something about one of your ancestors, whether you knew them or whether it's a story. Again, a kindred ancestor, a community ancestor, or a spiritual one. Maybe something they had. I think I'm holding Florence Fenwick Miller, my great-great aunt who fought for women's rights to vote. I think I'm going to write strength on that paper. And then I invite you, and you'll see the veil is there. The wind is blowing on that table. So then carry that ancestor with you into the fire and watch that prayer that they continue to have strength, or whatever the word is, in the world beyond, and that you keep a part of that light in your heart in the world that is. So we light our first candle for the lives of our ancestors. May their stories and the best of them flow in us and through us, and by that blessing, may we in turn bless the world. And we light a second candle for our community's ancestors. And today I'll lift up the name of Stephen Wiley, a lay leader in this fellowship who fought tirelessly for integration in the school system, and a poet to boot. May we move forward for justice, and may we move forward with beauty too. And our third candle is our spiritual ancestors. And you recall to your own mind the prophet and teachers that guide you. And may that light always be with you. And for the final two, which both represent deaths from COVID, let us hold in our hearts all the families who are grieving a raw and new grief this year. May they be comforted and find hope in the legacy of love and light left behind. And now, I invite you to move forward, to write a word on the paper and remain distanced from people outside of your pod, and then to head towards the fire. Let us fill this space with our prayers and the spirits of our ancestors. So happy Halloween, friends. Enjoy the candy and the games and the fun. And remember the truth, that today is precious. If you need to pinch yourself to remind you it is a gift to feel the warmth of the sun and the warmth of this community on your cheek. Some days, I swear, the gentle breeze is the hand of my Father. Who do you feel moving with you on this day? Let us feel them, and let us live purposely, because they have lived. blessed be. And go to the fire with peace and blessings.
That made my day, believe me. I figured she'd tell that joke if she was dressed as the